All right. Meta recently laid off around 10% of the engineering workforce, and around 20% of the workforce was moved into a different role of data labeling rather than doing day-to-day engineering tasks, which points to a sudden shift, not a sudden shift like a 6-month-old shift that's been happening in engineering ever since Sonnet 4.7 or GPT-5 came out. Engineering obviously has gotten better, and in this video, we're going to talk through the end of an old type of developer, a developer that was very high in demand in 2021, and the birth of a new type of engineer. What is the difference between them? I've gathered a bunch of data from the internet and along with my connections with companies and understanding how they're hiring engineers and what an engineer is doing on a day-to-day basis. This video I'm going to talk about. If you're starting from zero, or even if you're like a beginner to mid-size engineer right now, what are the things that you should be learning? What should you be spending your time on during work hours, after work hours, and how probably in like a few years when all of this consolidates, the engineering landscape would look like? Without any further ado, let's get right into it. The first point I'm going to talk about is the end of a Crud developer. This basically starts off from 2021, where a little bit of TSA, maybe some dev and projects, and you're good to go to provide value to a company, because the bottleneck for a company was software production. It was hard to find engineers who could write code by hand, and this is probably similar to a few years ago or many years ago when we needed a lot of manual labor to do a bunch of things. Eventually industrial systems came into the picture, and now we have orchestrators that move machines. Don't have people digging mud through their hand. Unfortunately, software engineering looks very similar. What we used to do 5 years ago now sounds very primitive, and if anything, it feels like over the last 15 years the engineering output where it was will probably be achieved in the next 6 months to a year. To back this up with some data, Meta recently fired like, I don't know, 10-20% of their workforce, and around 6,500 people are in the ADO org, which is the organization that does a lot of data labeling. It's probably when they acquired Scale AI, which is a data labeling company, their motivation behind it was to get the best data to eventually train better Llama models or probably work with the other labs. Either way, they're now one of the biggest data labelers in the world, and surprisingly, a lot of these data labelers were ex-engineers at Meta working on software products. Roughly 4 to 5,000 of these are software engineers. Meta has around 25,000 engineers, meaning every 1 in 5 to 6 software engineers may now find themselves doing data labeling full time. This is a very weird situation to be in as an engineer. You were accustomed to a certain lifestyle and day to day. I think there is more joy in building software products than labeling data. Unfortunate as it is, the job of these engineers is now, basically to replace themselves, which might not be the worst thing in the world. But if a company as big as Meta, probably the biggest engineering hire, one of the biggest engineering hire in the world, is going in this direction, there's a high probability others follow. I'm not necessarily saying everyone will start to label data. I'm just saying for Meta, they had bandwidth to move these engineers to a different org, but that might not be true for other companies. There's another problem, which is tokens are measured as a part of performance. So devs are aggressively optimizing for it. This is not just true for Meta. There are a bunch of companies that have token leaderboards, and whoever is at the top of the token leaderboard is rewarded in some form or fashion. I think that's probably not the best way to monitor someone's productivity, because people will just token max for no reason at all. When layoffs were confirmed, engineers also learned that managers shall inspect token count during performance reviews. This raised worries that those with low token counts might be marked as underperformers and dismissed. So what is the natural reaction to this as an engineer at Meta? They start using AI for tools just for the sake of generating more tokens. This happened while Meta had an internal token leaderboard encouraging token maxing. This part feels a little weird to me, but unfortunately, a lot of companies take this as a metric now. I'm sure there's a product that will come out eventually that actually tracks real productivity compared to token maxing. Nonetheless, it is obvious that engineering leaders feel people who are using more AI are going to be better engineers compared to the ones that aren't. Here is a graph from interviewing.io, which is a company where people come and interview with ex-FANG Meta engineers, and you can see the number of people from Meta that signed up as interviewers on this platform has spiked in April, around the time that the layoffs and the migration happened. This is a specific example of Meta, but assume all of this is going to roll over to most companies. 20-30% of the workforce, in case of Block it was 50%, might move to other roles, might get laid off, because there's only so much software a company can build. As much as you can try to expand horizontally and build more product, a company can try its best to not lay off, but at the very least, they'll plateau hiring or freeze hiring. They'll not have more hires for a few years because they're probably over capacity when it comes to software engineering demand. That takes us to the second point. which is surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, startup hiring is generally better in the last 1 year. Here is a graph. These are all US based companies. Again, the data that I gathered from only had US companies. But from my conversations with a bunch of engineers, in fact, yesterday, someone from the last Super 30 batch, one of the better students who did not get placed got an offer from a Bangalore based startup called Emergent, which is sort of the few AI companies from India that's doing well. In video is another one, but they're like, you can count, but you can like count good AI companies built from India for the world on your fingers, and Emergent is one of them. With AI comes a lot of opportunity as well, and a bunch of opportunities to build startups. And when those startups are built, the appetite for engineers might be less, but there will be appetite. And hence, this is probably one of the best times, if you've not already started, to start learning about, at the very least, applied AI, if not AI research. For experienced engineers with AI/ML backend or platform skills, it's actually a decent time to be in the industry. For freshers or generalist roles, it's tough. Companies like Crud and 𝗟𝗶ሔር are hiring, but being very selective, not running the large intake cycles that you saw in 2021, 2022. When I graduated, 𝗟𝗶ሔር came for on-campus placements, and this is like a very common thing for companies to do. I feel this will start to go down, if not plateau, and you'll see engineers being hired through various other ways. When I say other ways, I mean if an engineer is really good in their craft, in their skill, a company might be able to notice them. I say this with a lot of empirical evidence of running, Super 30 and realizing if you actually put your head down and work for a few months, in some form or fashion, you'll reach somewhere. You might reach an 8 LPA job, you might reach a 50 LPA job. That range, you should probably be able to land if you're just putting your head down for 6 months. In the last Super 30 batch, there were around 3 or 4 people who were really good but did not get placed by the end. And at this point, everyone is placed. I know names. Siddhant was one guy who did not get placed, took an extra month, got for a $5,000 a month job. Pankaj was one of the good Rust engineers who recently, I referred him somewhere, but he told me he's already working. And yesterday, a third person, let me not name him, he still has to receive his offer. As I said, after a lot of struggle, being one of the best people yet not getting placed, got an offer. So it's sort of painfully obvious with the right networks and number one, putting your head down for 6 months, you might be able to make space for yourself in a startup. Almost everyone who gets placed in our on-site batches gets into startups only. That's the only network that I understand. There is a full path to big tech and MNCs, but one I'm not too connected to yet. For startups, probably one of the better times to grow higher, because if you're doing anything AI right now, it's easier to have a lot of momentum, tailwind, and funds to execute it. With that, we'll move on to the third point. This is around the 100x organization. I'm unsure how many of you saw, but ClickUp, which is a fairly big company, reduced their headcount by 22%. The founder tweeted that the business is strongest it's ever been, but I think it's important to be direct with what I'm seeing and why. What he said in the tweet was that it became obvious that at this point, if they had a lot of dead weight, or if systems were built in the way they were being built for the last 10 years, they might not be able to survive in the long run. The founder coined this term called the 100x organization, where they said the primary changes that were restructuring around what I call the 100x org. The goal is 100x output. The roles required to build at the highest level are fundamentally different than what they were a year ago. Incremental improvements to existing systems won't get us there, but this is an important point. A lot of systems were built by humans by hand and not by AI from scratch. A lot of times it might just be easier to rebuild a product. I think the Bun Zig to Rust migration is a good example of this. Bun migrated their full code base from Zig to Rust using AI in probably less than a week. And that tells you if a JavaScript runtime can migrate from one framework to another or one language to another in less than a week, any company's software, irrespective of how long it was built for, 5 years, 10 years, there may be a case to be made to build it from scratch using AI, write a lot of tests for it, and just make sure it's feature compatible with the current systems. That's exactly what he said. We need new systems. That means creating enough disruption to rebuild rather than iterate on what's already broken. I feel founders might have some level of sunken cost fallacy over here, where they might feel that they've spent a lot of energy, time, and engineering resources to build their current systems. But I do agree. I think if the systems are not reshaped a bit or not built from scratch again, and if they're not AI friendly, you might not be able to move as fast as you could have if the systems behave better with AI. The common narrative is that AI makes everyone more productive. It doesn't. Many of the workflows of today, if left unchanged, create bottlenecks in the AI systems. 100% agree. And the Zig to Rust migration sort of points in that direction as well. There might be many reasons for the migrations, some more political than others. But the one that was touted publicly was Rust is a more memory safe language, and memory is what Bun struggled with a lot. as good as AI might be in, writing memory safe code, it was just easier to migrate the whole thing to Rust and start from scratch. There are a few roles that this person sort of recommended that companies have, and we're going to talk about these roles next. Systems manager is one such role, but there are like 3-4 such roles that they talked about. And we'll talk about, what exactly probably you should learn to be a good fit for that specific role. One thing to add over here, rewarding 100x impact, one very, call it nice thing that they said was this is not to cut down on costs, and they're open to, giving much higher compensation packages to the people who are performing. It's not that the budget for the engineering org went down. It's more like it got redistributed towards, better performance, 10x performance, 100x performance. Compensation bands of today should be thrown out the door. We're introducing $1 million cash per year salary bands with a path available to nearly everyone in the company if they produce 100x impact by creating or managing AI systems. That's a little too far ahead, but you get the idea. With a lot of AI systems, with a little bit of AI systems, you can be much more productive, and companies are open to, compensating based on your impact and not based on your existing salary bands. With that, Seb introduced a few new types of roles. I'm going to talk through what I understood about them and what you should learn if you're, targeting one of these roles. I think all of them are sort of, mildly important / you will see hiring in these. Number one was the builder / the 10x engineer. Unfortunately, not much has changed here. This is the normal engineer that you were, plus you need to be good with AI, more productive, and your fundamentals need to be really strong. It's as good as that. You probably need less syntax knowledge. You need more systems knowledge, operating systems, concurrency, deploying projects at scale, scaling databases, scaling backends, scaling frontends. Anything and everything that your company might eventually hit where AI might not be as helpful is a mild bare minimum before you call yourself a 10x engineer. For a path, I've written down a few things. These are things that people sort of pick in Super 30. Most people that come are already good in TypeScript or Python. They learn Go or Rust and system design the first 1 month. Applied AI is the most obvious thing to spend your time on right now, because most probably a dire hire will happen in these companies. Only these companies would be super desperate to expand very fast compared to, a Web2 company, a crypto company at this point. There's definitely a path to, get into a finance company. There are a bunch of these in India. Some of them hire through us. And over there, there's, a probability stats round that you'll go through. If you're targeting a JPMC or Goldman Sachs, probably similar. And this is where I'd probably cut the line. This is probably enough to target in 6 months to become a 10x engineer. And everything after that is pure interest / a longer path to actually become really skilled at it. And the 2 paths I've written over here are memory internals. There are a bunch of companies that are now solving a very specific problem of AI, which is giving them long-term, short-term memory. And AI research in general, vision models, language models, take your pick. This path seems a little more academic to me. I think if you do want to go down this route, it's a slightly longer path of going for a master's or a PhD. You might be able to, do it in undergrad as well. But there's a high probability that eventually where you'll be working will be some level of applied AI and not real research. It'll make your path to an applied AI company faster though. That's the first path, the builder's path. There's a second path, which is the, systems manager's path. This is probably, it makes more sense for a 5-year experienced person who was probably going down the EM route in the past, but now should not go down the engineering manager route, but go down this route where they're not just managing people, but also, and probably only managing AI agents, and whatever they were delegating to engineers in the past is something they're delegating to AI agents now. All of this is not fad, it's just true. As futuristic as this might sound, one manager just controlling a bunch of AI agents and getting the job done, there is some probability that this happens. They might need a few engineers, but for sure will not need the same number of engineers as they did a few years ago. The second path to all of this is just becoming really good in comparative programming. A lot of companies still do and probably will in the future value this. Tourist is a good example of this. He got into Cognition. The full founding team of Cognition, I think, was really good in comparative programming, went to world finals, etc. This path will sort of probably not go away. It sets you apart compared to a bunch of other people. Even if you know none of this, but this very well, you probably can land yourself, in this builder 10x category, and you'll probably very naturally get there rather than trying to optimize for it or think 100 times that I need to be a 10x engineer. You'll just land there if you're really good in comparative programming. The second one is the path called frontliners. I'm seeing this not very actively, but fairly actively. You might have heard of GTM or DevRel engineers. These are people who basically work with a third company. So if you're hired at OpenAI as a DevRel engineer, there's some probability you're working with some startup in Minnesota and helping them integrate OpenAI into their systems. So it's still some level of engineering, some level of communication. And surprisingly, a lot of hiring is happening over there. Like traditionally, when you think of DevRel, you'd think someone who, has some Twitter following or, is a creator. But now there is sudden demand for more such engineers. And why is that? Because a lot of these bigger companies are building systems for other companies, and OpenAI is building models that thousands of enterprises are going to use. And that is where they need this engineer to come in and work with the third company to integrate systems of OpenAI. OpenAI acquired a company recently that did something similar, and all 150 engineers of those are now OpenAI DevRels, or call them whatever, GTM engineers. We've made a referral recently in this specific niche, and it's my first time also figuring out if it's a good niche or not. What is your day-to-day? It's definitely rewarding when it comes to compensation. But is it rewarding in terms of your mental stimulation as a CS engineer? I don't know yet. Is a question mark that I'll be able to answer in the next video. The one bare minimum over here is you need to be really good in English communication. That's probably one thing you'll be interviewed on. And secondly, you will probably not get enough time coding. You'll probably have to debug systems of a third company and help them with some fairly basic tasks, nothing too crazy. You'll have to understand their code bases, and generally it'll be the same set of problems that you'll see again and again as you work with various companies. I am interested to see where this goes. It might just be a fad. It might just be a very long-term thing that becomes like a popular role in the next 5 to 10 years. That's all I had for this one. Hopefully, you take this as some level of a warning sign / alarm bells / take a pause and just look at the market, look at some data before you decide what you're spending your time on. If you want to do CS or not, and if you do want to do CS, what might be the right way to become a good CS engineer who has a job in the next 3-4 years compared to one that might not. And not really trying to sound dystopian over here. I do this for a living, getting people placed. So I realize how hard and difficult and weird it's getting over time. And hence the video hopefully puts that across. With that, we'll end it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.